before I do that, I just want to give you an example. When I started my lab 8 years ago, I happen to be lucky that I'm working in a field outside of science. I do theater, a lot of theater half the time. So that's a field where they have the opposite problem. Everything is here. They need more of this. It's different, but everything is here. Now listen. So I was thinking, what's the goal? Why am I starting a lab? What's the goal? And if you're in an ideological vacuum, then you can pick up something from the outside. Like the goal of my lab is to publish the most papers of the highest quality. Most papers of the highest quality. Why? So I can get tenure. So I can go deep into the unknown, see new things. There are different things. But I thought about it and I said, I'm going to do something else, the same thing but stated differently. My lab is going to be, the lab is a nurturing environment to allow or to get students and me to reach their full potential as scientists, and we'll put here, and human beings. So I think it's saying the same thing, but when you choose a value, either unconsciously or consciously, it affects every decision you make. It's very important to know how the lab looks like. What happens if a student has a baby? What do you do? What happens? How do you choose people? These values are like decision-making devices, you can say. And the worst thing is if they're implicit and you don't think about them. You choose something from the Western values, but if you do this, it just generates a growing spiral, and by definition, you reach the highest quality. That's what I discovered. Now, I'm not saying everybody should do this. I'm just saying that there's different styles. You know, I've heard other labs, like George Church says, my lab is an artist's colony. I heard somebody say that. It's a different way of thinking about it. There's many ways maybe of thinking about it. But making an automatic choice is dangerous. It's actually life-threatening. Do you know that recently there was a postdoc that committed suicide at MIT? After he committed suicide, people in his lab realized he had a 3-month-old baby. Nobody knew about it. Why didn't anybody know about it? So few communications. What are we? And this is, of course, a symptom of something very, extreme, but it's all through our culture. And you can say maybe it's external stress, like funding, etc. But external stresses are not the issue. The issue is that they expose the internal fragmentation. It's a specific topic I want to talk about today. This is an introduction. Oh yeah.
You said you're not saying that every lab should be the model too. So why not then?
Why not?
Yeah. You said? I think I heard you say that not every lab should follow model 2 instead of model 1. So.
What other models are there?
1. So the 2 different viewpoints, 1 versus 2, and I think you were arguing. I think you stated that not every lab should follow
okay. So thanks.
viewpoint 2. So why not then?
Do I understand from your question that you like viewpoint 2? What stage are you?
Associate.
Associate professor? I'm happy to hear. And where do you work?
A few buildings over, Division of Genetics and Department of Medicine.
What's your name?
What's your name?
Martha Bullock.
Yeah, I heard you get a tough one, so now I remember. I think that it's not good to tell people what to do. It is good to raise the conversation, because many people might choose this or be strengthened in their own choice of this, or we can discuss how to do this, because there's a whole set of things you can do. And I think people who are interested in nurturing, they want to ask more questions how to nurture more. And I'm sure there's other styles. In my opinion, it's okay to have people in science also that are very competitive and want to do science to beat the other person. Or it's okay. I'm talking about raising it to the level of consciousness. So everyone knows that it's an issue. Maybe it should be valued. What do you think? So the specific thing I want to explore, and this is of course the first time I'm talking about it, so it's very, very interesting for me. It's like research. And I've benefited from many discussions with Ron and with Becky, Galit, Ze'ev, and Mark. I'm going to mention one insight that you had. And the subject is something we can say, why do scientists work so many hours? So kind of the laughter is of course
hours in the day.
there's not enough hours in the day. Thank you, exactly. So this laughter is welcome because it's inappropriate sometimes to speak about this in a scientific talk. Of course, I came here to give you some scientific talk, so why don't I get to the science? And what am I talking about? What is this? So I think it's a very important part of science that reflects on the quality of the science in the end. The quality of the science in any way that you want to measure it. So let's start from, again, the implicit assumptions that we might have. So if we think about the objective and rational model, we think that science, I'm going to exaggerate, is done by robots that are very smart. They go for the truth. The question of what is important is objective. Therefore, any robot can calculate what's the best question and go for it. What do we get? I'm going to draw a little graph here. And this axis is hours per week that I work. And this axis is scientific productivity. And I don't know how to measure it. Quality. We'll have to argue about that. But this model means this. I work more, I do more. I do work more, I get more. I work more, I get more. And of course, it's a model that comes from the outside world. It comes from a production line. Make twice as many cars. Or retail, you know, I'm going to shop more hours. It's more money. If I'm here, I can work more to get a gain. Some people even think a little bit non-linear like this, which means, this last hour, that's what's going to get me the experiment done, etc. Now let's consider adding, not forgetting about the objective side, but adding to it the subjective side, meaning that we're human beings with bodies. That we're subjective, which means the actual question to work on is not computable by an algorithm. It has to do with ourselves having time to understand in the weird conflicting data that we have, what's the interesting point that's not the original thing we set out to do, that's worth going after. That's the way science works. I drew in the retreat a little bit. This goes along with, this is the problem, this is the solution, this is the way science works. That's the schema. And if anything that goes like here, the student is depressed, etc., is a disturbance to the schema. It must be exterminated. But the way science actually works is this. You go from A to B, then you do this, this, this. Here's the ubiquitous mode of like, nothing's working, my experiments aren't working, my assumptions are wrong, nothing is working. It can be very much linked to negative emotions. But if you have time, you can notice the beautiful flower on the side path. You go to it, you go. That's how science works. It's more realistic. But what does this mean for our work productivity chart? How does it look in the real life? Now, science is a different profession from turning the crank, even though there it's not like that either.